Welcome back to a Boxscore Geeks show, and you have caught us at I guess the official start. I mean, last night there was, in fact, several games, but today the NBA is in full swing. So we're back to talk our projections for the season and then also mock a few GMs for what they had to say about this season. So I'm Alvarez, aka Nerd Numbers. We have all the geeks on with us today. So we have Arturo Galletti, also Arturo Galletti on Twitter. Say hey, Arturo.
Hey, Arturo.
Cute. All right. We also have the original NBA geek himself, Patrick Minton, also
hey,
at NBA Geek on Twitter.
Hey, everybody.
Okay. And with that, we're just going to jump straight into previews. We didn't learn our lesson last year and tried to do about, I think, 30 pieces in 2 weeks. I think we hit it. And so we have all the numbers up. If you go to boxscoregeek.com/team, you can click on the previews tab and see what we thought everybody was going to do. The underlying model of this method was all Arturo's wizardry. And we're just going to talk about what we thought is going to happen this season and then possible contention for all of us. Now, when we were talking pre-show, we were thinking about going to the very, very top of the list, like the Spurs. But let's just admit that we're basketball fans and the Spurs are boring. And I'm going to start us in the middle. I'm going to start us with the Lakers. And Arturo, you are less than optimistic about them, even though your model initially had them a little higher.
Well, no, initially, there is something going on. I was joking on Twitter last night that apparently the Chris Paul trade reversed the streams. And all the bad luck that the Lakers haven't had for 30 years, it seems to have kind of like fallen on that franchise. I mean, like just random freak injuries all across the board. Steve Nash is out. Julius Randle is out. The whole Kobe kind of Laker marriage, where like that Kobe Laker marriage is at the point where like the relationship is not good for anybody involved, but nobody wants to admit it's over. So it's that team just does not look good. And throw in Byron Scott, who just, I don't know, with somebody, I was hearing the joke, he's on Frozen Caveman Coach because he's like, no, we have to take mid-range jumpers. That Lakers situation is just not good. I mean, I was watching it last night, and this is a serious comment. Ed Davis and Carlos Boozers are the two best defenders on the Lakers. Like Ed Davis and Carlos Boozer. When that's the case, you have a real problem. So I mean, again, the numbers were optimistic. I'm at the point where I'm like, I could definitely see them being a bottom 5 team. Especially when you consider that if they finish out of the bottom 5, Phoenix gets their pick. And I don't think they want to do that, and they shouldn't want to do that.
So by the way, one thing that's interesting about Scott that's worth noting is, especially towards the end of his time in the NBA, provided the three-point line had been shortened, he was shooting more three-pointers as a player per 48 than his team is currently shooting per game. He was shooting 6.4 three-point shots.
Oh, yeah.
In 95 and 97.
This is the equivalent of Ray Allen becoming a coach in the NBA and saying like, no, I hate the 3-pointer. We're not taking any 3-pointers. It's like, no, it makes no sense. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's also worth noting. Go ahead, Patrick.
So I think it's pretty telling that he said that he thinks the 3-pointer will win you lots of games in the regular season, but it won't win the championship. And yet 7 out of 8 of the last 8 NBA champions pretty much led the league in 3-point shooting. And it's also really, really telling that they are also bringing back a defensive scheme that looks like it's pretty much copied from the Detroit Pistons, except the Detroit Pistons of the 80s, except that they took advantage of a bunch of rules that let you play defense like that, and those rules don't exist anymore. So this team is going to have, I forget the over-under number on wins. I want to know what's the over-under on the number of games that the Lakers commit 30 fouls and take less than 10 threes. Because, if they do that with regularity, and I think they will, they're going to finish behind Philadelphia, because there's a difference between having a really bad team and having a really bad team and then on purpose playing basketball that is designed to lose games. You put the other team on the line 50 times in a game and you only shoot 10 threes, you're going to lose. And you're going to lose badly all the time. Arturo,
absolutely. And I mean, it's also worth noting our projection when we put them up had Steve Nash and Julius Randle in, and Lakers are starting to drop like flies. So yeah, this team is just not looking in good shape. We can't hear you, Arturo, is what Brian's saying, but if you want to do sign language, Patrick and I will interpret. If you're like doing thumbs down, I think Arturo just said the Lakers are going to be bad. Let's go to the flip side, though, and talk the Spurs. You're really quiet.
Okay. So I'll be loud.
But,
so basically what I want to say is, like, I started the whole Kobe's leaving LA as a way to troll Laker fans because I like to troll Laker fans. And actually, with how this is breaking up and shaping up, I'm actually kind of like, I actually think that's a serious, but I don't think he like makes it through like this disaster of a season. I just don't think that's going to happen.
let's finish talking the Abbott piece. You wanted to bring that up. I know that's not quite projections, but we've got a long show, and I want to diss some GM, so I don't want to let this slide. This seems like the best place to talk it. It seems really interesting to me. I mean, Abbott's been I wouldn't even want to say anti-Kobe, anti the myth of what people think Kobe is. I actually do want to give one defense of Kobe, which is a lot of people are saying he is scaring away free agents. That's what one of the underlying stories is Kobe is preventing other people from ending up in Los Angeles. And I think that's actually a bit untrue. If we look at Kobe, Pau Gasol still came over, Lamar Odom and Pau Gasol re-signed, Dwight Howard came over, Chris Paul wanted to come over, Steve Nash came over. I don't really think you can pin this on Kobe. I think what happened is a lot of the free agents they got didn't pan out, and then after that, the Lakers did a horrible job of restocking the fridge, so to speak. Patrick, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's. I think that's totally a valid concern, and I think it's much. When I read the Abbott piece, I read it actually almost more as a critique of Lakers management than of Kobe, because it sounds like Jim Buss basically brought back Kobe for $50 million because he didn't want to face the public backlash of amnestying Kobe, which seems to be the consensus just about everywhere that would have been the smart basketball decision to make. And all I can think of is that if you are a billionaire running an NBA team and your main concern is how does the public perceive me, that's crazy talk. And I understand that Kobe. Okay, I understand there's this illusion that Kobe sells seats, Kobe sells tickets and Kobe makes the ratings higher and stuff, but that's not going to last very long. If the team keeps losing, if the team is as bad as it is going to be this year, it's simply not going to matter if Kobe's playing or not. Fans come to watch winning games, and the Lakers have a long tradition of winning, and the reason people watch more now when Kobe's on versus when Kobe's not on is because they think that means the team is going to win. But if that continues to not happen, the Kobe effect of increased ratings is going to disappear. And as far as season tickets goes, I mean, the Lakers are in the same position the Bulls were in the mid to late 90s after Jordan left. They're sold out for like 3 years. Like the stadium will be sold out, even if it's not actually full with people in there. And that's not going to change anytime soon. But I just think everything I've heard about how Jim Buss is running things makes me think Jim Buss does not know how to run any business, much less a basketball team.
I'd agree with that. And Arturo, I mean, like I said, I actually like Henry Abbott. I like the fact that he's kind of dismissed the idea of Kobe clutch. But you were talking a little about, like Reggie Miller during last night's broadcast. Everybody knows Reggie Miller.
Yeah, I think one thing.
Sideline commenter that we all want to hear more out. That's sarcasm for the listeners.
Yeah, basically, there's 2 points I wanted to make. One is it does really seem like that piece is kind of representative of what I think that there is a power struggle going on in the Lakers, and you have Jim Buss on one side and Jeanie Buss on the other. And Jeanie's Team Kobe, and Jim is not Team Kobe. And it almost seems like, or almost reads to me like, Jim's the one who's leaking everything to Jim, and his people are the one who are leaking everything to Abbott. And I think Jeanie's the one who's like, backing up Kobe, and this is all silly. And I think at the heart of it, that's kind of the struggle, which is like I think the Lakers don't know what the hell they are, and I think, you know, where Abbott comes in is like I have a hard time believing like Henry Abbott is going to put that story out there without like his sources like completely backing him, and particularly like on like ESPN the magazine like just before the season, knowing that he's going to get that level of attention. I think that I think that piece is representative of something else that's going on with that team.
I don't think there's any question in my mind that all of the sources are legitimate and that piece has. I mean, I've known Henry casually now for about 2 years. We've had a couple telephone conversations. We've met at Sloan. We've had email threads, and he's a consummate professional. There's simply zero chance that any of this is made up. It just doesn't. There's no way. And for anyone to imply that simply because these sources are anonymous, which of course they are. I mean, if you're a source in the Lakers organization, you have two choices. You can be an anonymous source or you can lose your job. Of course they're anonymous sources. So, I mean, just the implication that just because sources are anonymous, they're not real, that's some serious bullshit.
Well, and again, like Jeannie Buss came out and said straight out that she would fire the people in her organization that were doing these leaks if she knew who they were. Of course they're going to be anonymous sources. It's like, why would I go out and say this when I
know that the non-Lakers people, the agents that he interviewed, they're going to be anonymous too, because I mean they want other NBA players to become their clients, and they want the Lakers to negotiate with them in good faith. Of course they're going to be anonymous too. There's no one in this story who would say things like that on the record.
Here's the thing. The Lakers had more cash than anybody this year, almost more cash than anybody this year. They had the desire to win. They had the desire to go out and get players, and they got no one. The Clippers, who had no cap room, got better players than the Lakers. And again, you might say this is not something, but like honestly, I mean, it's just kind of stunning to me. Is like, like Charlotte got a better free agent class than they did.
Yeah, but that's not. I mean, all of that is easily explained by money. Like, if you look at how much more money Melo got by staying in New York, I mean, it's not. It's per year, it's more, and per total. If you think about the fact that since Melo is 30 years old, his fifth year matters a lot, right? So, I mean, he made probably $40 million more by staying in New York than living in LA. This is not because he doesn't like Kobe. Maybe that would have played a factor, but that's not the reason.
I agree, but what I'm saying is like historically the Lakers and the Clippers and the Knicks get their guys because of the place where they are.
But historically there was a CBA in place where it was a lot easier to lure guys away. Right now the advantages are for the team that has the bird rights, and the advantages are huge when it comes to money.
That brings up another point, which is
by the way, into what you're talking, Arturo, when you're talking the new CBA, you keep bringing that up and how it's going to do a bump. The thing for a player like Chris Bosh is, by signing with the Miami Heat, he gets a max deal, and that's going to keep up with the increased rate. It's a percentage of the salary cap. So they know that.
Maybe not. Yeah, it's a bit of a question mark whether that's going to be the case or not. You have to read finally, but yeah, probably that's going to be the case. I think the other key point, which is right now, somebody was saying that like the overnight ratings for opening night were the lowest in something like 7 or 8 years. And I think part of the problem is like because the large market teams aren't good, because of the change in the CBA that took their advantages away, then like the league is more competitive. But actually, that's actually worse from a business point of view for the league, because dirty secret, you're better off if the Lakers, Knicks, Clippers, and Nets, like the teams in the large markets are good, you're better off if you're the NBA. Like I don't want Oklahoma and the Spurs necessarily like the Spurs or Indiana like to be the best teams, because that won't get the asses in the seats, right? That won't get the ratings. Now, the NBA doesn't really care at this point because they've already signed the TV deal, right? So like they're kind of locked in, so it's not a huge problem right now. But long term, you want to make sure that teams that have money have an advantage, because like honestly, you want to force teams that are in markets that are really not rentable to move, right? So you can't afford to carry like crappy markets by like having like the large.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a terrible thing last year to potentially have the Spurs and the Pacers making it to the finals. It's not a good thing that the Spurs are one of the best teams in the league. I mean, it might be good for the Spurs as a feel-good story, but Ethan Sherwood-Strauss, as we've quoted on the show before, notes that television ratings are down, and this isn't hard to see with the emergence of teams like Oklahoma City.
I want to throw a caveat in
okay.
here. I don't think that's entirely true. I mean, I think okay, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm pretty sure the ratings for the Thunder are much higher than the ratings for the Spurs. And I think one of the reasons the Spurs have such low ratings is Tim Duncan is the most boring man on earth. I mean, Tim Duncan and Russell Wilson.
I don't buy it. If Tim Duncan was in Los Angeles, it would be a ratings boom.
I'm not saying that he's a boring basketball player, especially to people who love basketball, but he has no like sort of personality or flair or style, and his style of play is not exactly exciting to watch. And now I agree, fans come out for wins, but those are the people in San Antonio. Yeah, the people who are not in San Antonio don't really care about wins, because the neutral site fans are going to tune in because they just want to see a good product. And people turn the TV on for Kevin Durant.
By the way, I realize we've because I know I caused this. I got us onto the Henry Abbott piece and got us off the topic, but we were talking projections. So going for the Spurs, I'm actually curious about this, and I'm going to do this with every team. Obviously, the Lakers, with all of the injuries, we can just shoot Arturo's rating to hell already. It's not your fault, Arturo. It's exactly what I said. Its minutes are hard. But and the good news, right, Patrick, is in Vegas. I'll be done in a sec, Arturo. In Vegas, luckily, Patrick, it was too close to the over/under. You didn't take that bet, correct?
No, I didn't take that bet because we thought the model was full of shit. We looked at what the model was saying, and we said, I'm not touching that team with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah,
so Arturo said that to me, but I looked at it, and I looked at the minutes projection, and I was like, Steve Nash playing 2,000 minutes, whatever simulation spit that out is fucking high. And it's that, and the fact that, Kobe, you're basically relying on Kobe to be 2009 Kobe to meet the model's projection, and I think that's craziness.
Yeah, and again, we looked at everything here. We also looked at like kind of the scuttlebutt in the news, and we knew that like the news coming out of Laker camp with Byron Scott, and we knew the thing with Steve Nash. We said it in the preview. In the preview, very clear at the bottom, I said like, stay the hell away from this Lakers team. This could implode. And we also, when we did this initially, we looked at like the cap situation, and we looked at the draft situation, and we were very aware that the Lakers had every incentive to tank, because if not, they have to give their pick to Phoenix. If they finish outside of the top 5 in the draft, they have to give their pick to Phoenix. So they have every incentive to tank, right? Because they're not going to win, so they're better off like not doing well. And actually, after yesterday, I mean, we were arguing before the show that they might not win as many games as the Sixers. I mean, I think
this is just a situation where the model just falls apart. I mean, I think if you took a guy like Stan Van Gundy and you gave him that roster, could he win 40 games? Absolutely. He'd figure out ways to get guys like Ed Davis minutes and Jordan Hill minutes at the same time. He'd keep guys like Nick Young on the bench. I mean, but nobody's going to do that, and we can't trust them to do that.
You know who could win 40 games with this roster playing a a high offense, no defense style? Mike D'Antoni.
I don't agree. I think he's overblown.
All right, but I'll move us on from the Lakers, because we've talked them to death. But I want to move us on to the next team. I liked your point there, Patrick, and this is good because I actually like discussion of this. And I want this to be very, very clear. We've said this for years. No one seems to listen. Predictions at the beginning of the year are not indicative of the tools we use, because so much of it is guesswork, and that's not a dig. I mean, that's just the simple point. It's hard to know who's going to play. And it also doesn't mean we all agree. Like you said, Patrick, clearly you've been validated by history already. You didn't think Steve Nash had a snowball's chance in hell of playing 2,000 minutes. You were right. But we're on to the Spurs. 60 wins is what Arturo's numbers spit out. I'll ask Patrick first, then Arturo second. Patrick, do you think the model's high here, or do you think that's spot on?
Okay, I think that's spot on, but with some caveats. I mean, let's be honest. I think I wrote that in the preview today, right? I mean, the only reason everybody in the entire nation who watches basketball isn't at the same page and saying, "Oh yeah, 60 wins, totally realistic," is because that Pop is going to have multiple games where he's going to have the entire starting 5 sitting out with the flu or back spasms or did not play old or whatever. I mean, because Pop rests his players. Now, I still think the over is entirely reasonable, because even if you take the Spurs' entire second team, that's easily a playoff team. It's still a really good team, and they're gonna, they're gonna play 500 ball or better even on those days when Pop rests everybody. But because he's resting everybody, you can't really put big money on the Spurs. I mean, we put money on the over. We put some money on the over. But I mean, if you had confidence, okay, let me put it this way. If Tom Thibodeau was coaching the Spurs, I would put the entire bankroll on the over, because he's going to put the 5 best players on the floor for 40 minutes every game. And they might crash out in the second round of the playoffs because all of their players are dead tired. But that's the way he would coach in the regular season. But Pop isn't going to coach them that way. Pop is going to, not only is Pop going to play weird lineups, he's also going to experiment. Arturo brought this up a few podcasts ago. You're going to have lineups where Pop says, well, let's see what happens if I have Boris Dio guarding Chris Paul. What could go wrong, right? And he's just going to do things like that. Part of it is him trying to figure out what's going to work, so he has more things in his playlist. Part of it is Pop saying, fuck you, you're not going to get to see my playoffs and my playbook until game 4 of the playoffs, right? I mean, Pop is a very smart man, and he knows the regular season is not where it's going to count with this team. They need to be good enough in the regular season to get home team advantage, and that's all they need. And that's exactly how he's going to coach that team.
Yeah,
and how about you, Arturo? So agree with the numbers your spreadsheet spread out, or caveats?
No, I totally agree with. I mean, like, I did as much, any simulation I ran, loved the Spurs. I couldn't do anything to make the Spurs go down. To make a point, you know who the 3 best players for the Spurs were in the playoffs last year? It was Kawhi Leonard, Patty Mills, and Thiago Splitter. All 3 of them did not play last night. They still won. Right? They still looked like the better team last night against a pretty good Mavs team. And no, Kyle Anderson didn't see a minute in that game. We think Kyle Anderson is going to be one. He was one of the 3 best rookies in the preseason, and he looks really good. So this team is so deep. When your 10th best guy is Boris Diaw, right? Then it's really hard, right? Because whatever you do, whatever they do, whatever Pop does, he's still rolling out an NBA quality a playoff lineup, regardless of whatever happens to that team any given night. And that's why 60's a walk. And again, the other thing is, I think, Pop doesn't care whether or not he gets the 1 seed, right? It'll be interesting. And there may be a point where it's you know what? I don't want to play the Mavs. Mavs are the 8 seed. I don't want to play the Mavs in the first round. I'd rather play the Blazers in the first round. So let me tank for a few games. Or it's or it just, again, we don't know how hard they're going to play at the end of the season. We know they're good. We know that the number was too low. We know that 60 is probably right for that team, right? But as Patrick is saying, if they were going to play the minutes that Tibbs plays, we would bet the bankroll on them. But we know that they're not going to do that.
Well, also, one interesting thing about your numbers, and they're parts, and so we'll talk the Cavaliers next, because they're the interesting one. But, if we end up in a situation where the Spurs are ahead of the pack, which is what you're currently projecting, then absolutely you're going to see Popovich rest guys. Absolutely you're going to see, possibly see LeBron James and Kevin Love resting if there's no hope of catching the Spurs. So I agree with that. Now, on that note, let's get to the Cavaliers next, Patrick, because I think this was another team, not to the degree of the Lakers, but you've expressed some concerns over. Arturo's model has him at about 54 wins, but with some caveats. I'd like to hear you talk on that, and then Arturo discuss as well.
Well, I think that the model is very conservative in terms of the minutes that the major players are going to get. And I think there's a lot of evidence that that's how it's going to play out. As you said before, it's all guesswork, right? It could all change. David Blatt might turn out to be a guy who coaches like Tibbs and rides his best horses like crazy. We don't really know, especially since we have no past experience with him. But the theory is that Blatt's a smart guy, and this is a roster that's more or less 10 deep. So you can probably expect that guys like LeBron James are not going to play the minutes that they used to do in previous years, particularly because LeBron did it last year. LeBron played heavy minutes to make up for Wade not playing, and he got nothing for it, right? He went to the finals and got his ass kicked by San Antonio. And he's probably thinking to himself, I don't really need to do that again. I'm turning 30. I want to play until I'm 40. That sounds like a terrible idea for me. And it wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, it fits with the whole idea of losing weight in the offseason, slimming down like Kobe did to prolong his career. It seems logical that they're going to try for basically a plan where let's be pretty good in the regular season, but let's not worry about winning 27 straight like the Heat team did, 2 years ago. It just doesn't. That seems like the logical conclusion. Now, again, if LeBron and Love both get 2,800 minutes, throw that projection out the door. That team's going to walk to 60 wins and might get 65. It could totally go crazy, but it just seems logical that they're going to play 10 deep.
Yeah, I think the other thing is like they went out and got Mike Miller and Sean Marion to back up LeBron. So they actually went out and actually built a roster that's kind of built for a little bit like the grind. And again, I think, and I was making the point, which is out of the 5 projected starters for that team, we have 3 that have missed significant time in the last few years. So Kevin Love's missed significant time, Kyrie's missed significant time, and Anderson Varejao basically lives on the disabled list, right? So, and and the other thing the model looks at is, LeBron's getting up there, and it's saying that, like, guys who are starting to get to his age group in the NBA do start to miss some time. So when you put that all in there, and it says, hey, the guy who's most likely to get the most minutes in this team is Dion Waiters, who's the guy we don't like on this team. So again, keep in mind, I think this is clearly the best team in the East. I think this is a team that at full strength is up there with the Spurs. I do think that, the evidence says that they're not necessarily going to have that full strength the entire season. There's some bad players on this roster as well. I mean, there's some players that we don't like on this roster. And again, it's going to take a little bit of time to figure it out. And again, they might be 10 games better than the rest of the East. So there might come a point where, like, they're 5 games, like they're 10 games ahead with like a month to go, and they just basically, like, it's like Sean and Mike and Tristan Thompson are playing tonight, and LeBron and Love are resting tonight. So I
don't think they're going to go that far, but I do think that you'll see them playing 25 minutes a game instead of 35, right? Because okay, so a little bit of personal history here, little anecdote with almost no relevance to the NBA, but I have to tell it anyway. So when I was in high school, my team won 52 games in a row. We won 2 straight state championships. We won games by 40 and 50 games routinely. And, despite that, I didn't play very much. Even when the team was like winning like crazy. And I remember multiple instances where the other coach would come over to our coach and start yelling at my coach about how unethical he was and running up the score and everything. And I remember my coach said, and this stuck with me until today, my coach says to him, was like, look, I want to win a state championship. I have to have guys who can play 30-minute games because I can't destroy everybody in the regular season and then lose all my games in the state championships because my guys lose their wind after 20 minutes in a game. So the same thing's going to happen with the Cavs, even if they're up by 10 games with 15 games to go. Those guys are still going to play. They're still going to get reps in because you can't go into the playoffs with LeBron James feeling like he's just coming off the offseason, right? They got to be comfortable. They got to be able to run. They got to have some endurance. So they're going to take back-to-back nights off. They're going to take the second day of back-to-back off. They're going to play 25 to 30 minutes instead of 30 to 35, things like that. But you're not going to see things where they go like 5 games without Love or LeBron, or where one of the two sits every game. You're not going to see things like that.
Yeah, 58 and a half, which I think was a Vegas number, was way too high for that roster this year. Like, talk to me next year and I'll believe it. The problem is, like, again, I love Love. I love LeBron. I'm a little bit skeptical on Kyrie. I'm a lot skeptical on Dion Waiters, and I'm really skeptical about their depth at big man because they're relying on Anderson Varejao.
So, by the way, I actually want to cut in there, Arturo, because on Kyrie Irving, the exact same logic you give me as to why you think Russell Westbrook is a good player seems like it would apply to Kyrie Irving.
No. Kyrie's never put up numbers close to like the wins produced numbers that Russell has put up.
His shooting efficiency, his rookie season was absurd. His major problem is turnovers. If his shooting efficiency goes up and his turnovers go down, he turns into a very productive player.
Yeah, Kyrie's never produced at the level that, like, we argue, but Russ has been a really good player at stretches, and he's been a star level player for his entire career. Kyrie can't claim that. He really can't claim that.
He's been a star level player his entire career. No, that is not
Russell?
true.
Yeah, I'm going to look up the numbers, man.
No, I think Russell peaked at about 145. So, but I'll agree with Dre. I think the one thing that Cavs should be really excited about. So Kyrie had a really bad shooting year last year, but his turnovers went down, which is a really great sign because given his history, you can expect his shooting to rebound. Whereas it seems much more likely that the turnovers going down is an effect of him getting more comfortable in the NBA, learning how defenses play against him, and learning to make smart passes. Plus, I think the turnovers have to even be better this year when he's got LeBron James to take some of the ball handling duties off of him, when he has more easy targets to pass to. I think that Kyrie Irving is going to have a good year. I don't think Kyrie Irving is going to be anywhere near the sort of superstar level that would justify his crazy contract, which can also be said about Russell Westbrook. But I do think he's going to be good and have a good year.
Yeah,
and that's all I'm saying. Is I think Irving's gonna show improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I agree to that. I think the concern I was raising was like Kyrie has been fragile, much like Kevin Love. And again, that just kind of plays in. Again, I think if everybody's healthy, I think they kill and they walk to 62 wins. But I just don't think everybody's going to be healthy. You've got Anderson and Varejao on the team. I mean, come on.
Well, it depends on how they coach. I want to go to another team that's been really interesting. And in fact, at ESPN, some of the people there are listing them as the best team. I'm going to call out the Rap'em crowd, which seems to think, or the RPM at ESPN, which seems to think Klay Thompson is a better player than Andrew Bogut or Andre Iguodala. But that said, the Golden State Warriors, Arturo, you actually said this. They're right in the fray in the West. There's basically two tiers. There's the Spurs, and then this cluster with the Clippers, the Suns, the Warriors, the Rockets, the Blazers. You have the Warriors right in the middle. This team, to me, seems to be the most variant one because we talk about injuries, we talk about strategy. This team loves the three-point shot. This team to me seems to be kind of the most interesting. And yeah, I'll let Patrick go first again, but your thoughts. 51.8 wins. We keep saying it's guesswork, but your thought about that projection and your thoughts on the team for the year.
I would not be surprised at all if this team is a 55-win team or more. I mean, it really does depend on the robustness, their health, and it also depends a little bit on how Steve Kerr coaches them. I mean, if there's one thing that gives me hope for Klay Thompson, it's that Steve Kerr seems like the type of player that has a very similar skill set to what Thompson has and might be able to convince him to stop doing the stupid shit he does. I mean, if you look at Klay Thompson, he's like he might be the best three-point shooter in the NBA. Like, he's got a fantastic three, except the problem is he lets himself get pushed off the three-point line way too much. And when he gets pushed off of it, he settles for a really bad shot a lot. I mean, he shoots almost as much from the mid-range, maybe even more. I forget the numbers, but a very similar number to like LaMarcus Aldridge, which is crazy. That is not the shot you want your shooting guard to be shooting, especially when he's such a deadly three-point shooter. It really mucks up their spacing a lot when he does that, because their spacing is so much better if he parks his ass behind the three-point line, or when he's not on there, he goes all the way to the rim to create room for other players. And that's always been his big problem, and I've never been entirely convinced that he'll ever be cured of it. But there is a possibility that Steve Kerr can do that. And also the other big thing that's very promising is that I find it unlikely that Steve Kerr is going to do the crazy, misguided, let's throw the ball to Harrison Barnes in the post and see what happens offensive scheme that seemed to be Mark Jackson's favorite thing, especially during the stretch when Andre Iguodala was injured. It was like you saw that all the time. I know it drove Ethan Sherwood-Strauss totally nuts. And it drove me nuts too, because it's like, there's such a dynamic, such a great team. If they had a Spurs-like offensive scheme, they would be crazy fun to watch. But instead you saw Mark Jackson implementing this sort of like pounded into the post to a player who's not even very good in the post type offense. And so many possessions were just rescued by Steve Kerr pulling a crazy shot out of his butt. And yep. I think that this team could really be good. But again, you gotta plug in the variance, and the variance is that, like, Bogut is fragile. Curry, so here's the thing. It's great that Curry got 2,800 minutes last year, because that shows he's probably not nearly as fragile as we think. But if you're coaching them, you really don't want him to play 2,800 minutes. You want it to be like 2,400 minutes, and then you got to give those minutes to somebody else who's probably not as good. So, I can see a world where they win 55 to 60 games, but I think the over/under around 52 is just about perfect. If I were Vegas, I'd be putting it there, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to get half the money on both sides if I put that. right there.
Yeah,
All right.
I think.
And your thoughts, Arturo?
Yeah, I think we did that breakdown with Coach Nick, a B-ball breakdown. You helped as well, Dre. So we did that, and we compared Wes Matthews and Klay Thompson. And the point is, Klay Thompson was a better shooter than Wes Matthews, but Wes Matthews actually was a better scorer overall because his shot selection was way better than Klay Thompson's. One encouraging thing, and like everybody's commenting on this, is like the Golden State Warriors are actually running offensive sets this year. It's clearly, it's almost stunning to everybody who like follows that team, because like Mark Jackson was really not a good coach. And I think this is why Patrick and I probably couldn't work for ESPN, because like we know we don't care that he's like this preacher guy and everybody like, oh, no, he might be a nice guy, or some players might like him, but like he really couldn't coach his way out of a paper bag apparently. And actually, as I say, like, I mean, I've been on record with this, which is like, the Warriors probably have the best starting five of any team, Klay included. Like, Klay is a good shooter if he can do it right. And the problem is, again, fragility, and, everybody else is kind of bad. And the coach wasn't great. I do think that 52, same thing. 52 is the right number because there's enough risk there because of injury where it could go lower. But I do think that my personal gut feel is that they're going to be better because they're just going to be playing a better system, right? And there is something to be said for, like, and the Spurs show this, like, taking smarter shots, and I think that's going to be a key component in why I think the Golden State Warriors are going to outperform their number. They just can't outperform it enough so that Phoenix can't beat them. We want Phoenix to beat them.
Yeah,
fair enough. All right, and so we're actually, what I'm going to try and do, we're going to go about an hour, and we're at about 30 or a little over 35 minutes. So I'd say we have time for maybe one or two more teams. I'll let each of you choose. Arturo, we've been having Patrick start first, so I'll let you start. What's the last team you want to discuss?
I want to talk about the Bulls.
All right, let's talk the Bulls. You have them ranked 11th, projected wins 45.6. Now, actually, I want to get a number up in front of me because Derrick Rose has been playing well in the preseason, and they're playing right now, and I actually want to see, they are destroying the Knicks, not the Nets, sorry. And just as a quick check, Pau Gasol looks like old Pau. Derrick Rose isn't 100%, but he's actually shooting efficiently and getting assists. So what do you think?
Patrick, how many points do you think he could score on the Knicks front line?
Me personally? I bet I could get 10.
Yeah. let's not rush the judgment.
Hey, I've scored on Detlef Schrempf, I'll have you know, in a pickup game.
So no, the point I was going to make. So okay, so here's the thing with the Bulls, right? I am 10 games off the Vegas over/under for the Bulls, and there are a lot of reasons for that. Like, I did a lot of research about what happens when a guy is off for 2 seasons and then comes back, and the numbers are not good. I mean, like, a guy can come back to be about 80% of what he was, but he's going to like play less minutes. And there's nothing I've seen from this Bulls team in the last 3 or 4 years with Tibbs that leads me to think that, like, we're not going to wind up like, this is the way the season plays out. They play really well, but people start getting hurt because they're playing too many minutes. And like, by the end of the season, like, half the team is like in a walking boot. And like, if you throw in a team with, like, Pau, who hasn't been Pau for 3 years, you throw in the fact that, like, you got Rose with no backup plan, and you throw in all the caveats on this team, and the number isn't that far off. And again, keep in mind, and I said this in the piece, which is, Joakim Noah played more minutes than he has his entire career. He was healthier last year and better last year than he has been at any point in his entire career. I don't think that holds. I don't think there's any chance in the world that Joakim Noah plays 2,800 minutes again. The numbers say he won't, and history, and I've owned him in fantasy. I can't see him playing 2,800 minutes again. I just don't see that happening. Hell, Jimmy Butler's already out for 4 weeks, right? And we haven't even gotten started for the season. So again, given that, there's way too much risk on this team. And I think the right number for this team, the model has them at like 45, 46. I think 48, 49, because Thibs always seems to outperform expectations, is the right number. But I do think that the thing with this Bulls team is they have to be healthy come playoff time. This team is going to get banged up. This team is going to get hurt. You can't stop that. It's a Thibs team. That's how it goes. What they need to do is make sure, if they can get it so that they're healthy at the right time, they can make some noise. But I just, I have a hard time seeing that, and I've seen no evidence to kind of lead me to conclude that I'm wrong about this.
Yeah, their health the last couple of years, and then the team always freaks out in the offseason and doesn't sign good players. This season might be it. So, Patrick, your thoughts. You can comment on the Bulls or you can pick another team. I'll leave it up to you.
Let's talk about the Timberwolves, shall we?
Timberwolves.
League pass alert. They're tied with Memphis at 96, and there's 2 minutes left in the game. So the thing about Timberwolves,
we like the roster.
I'm okay. Here, the thing about the Timberwolves is very simple. You take Kevin Love away from a team and you figure, let's do some back of the napkin math. You can subtract 15 wins. So they won 40 last year. They're going to win 25 this year. Except if you look at Minnesota last year was a total freak of nature. They essentially set all kinds of records for being unlucky in close games. And that team should have won 48 games. So if they were really a 48 team, win team and you subtract 15 wins, you've got a 33 win team. I think this team is going to walk to 30 wins. They might get to 35. The thing is, the real danger here is if, at some point, Flip, the GM, is going to have a big staring contest with Flip, the coach, and it's going to come down to who's going to win here. And if Flip, the GM, wins, you might see some problems because you might see some craziness where let's pack up all our good players and trade them to New York for Bargnani and Amari and picks. That could totally happen, right?
Which is my favorite trade machine pick. I've put it like very.
Yeah, no, I mean things like that are. If the team underperforms just a little bit. As soon as the playoff picture is all but mathematically eliminated, there's a very real danger that Flip the GM just blows things up, either to save money because they have some crazy long-term contracts that I hate, like Kevin Martin's and Nikola Pekovic's, or to just get draft picks or whatever. I do like this roster, and it's full of young, scrappy guys that are they're gonna win games against really bad teams. I think they're gonna destroy teams like Philadelphia and Indiana and LA, and they're not in that category of bad. And they're exciting to watch, and a lot of that excitement is gonna fuel to like a home atmosphere where the team's gonna win games.
Yeah, I think the problem is like they have two rosters. We talked about this before, which is like, and you're saying it's like the ideal situation is you want Gordy Dang playing, you want Bennett and Wiggins and like Thad Young playing. And the problem is like if you have Peck and if you have Budinger and if you have Corey Brewer and if you've got Kevin Martin, then those guys are getting in the way of the guys you really want to play. So really that team does, it's almost irresponsible not to make a trade if you're the GM of that team, because really what you want to do is you want to move these like overpriced assets for like more picks, more young players, and then like free up some time so you can grow this team. Because you know what, we really kind of I like the young guys on this roster. I think if they get some playing time, this could be a really good team for a really good long time. Because hell, I think Bennett's actually going to be a good player. I think Wiggins is going to be a good player.
You
I think
may be alone there. That'll be interesting.
I will say I'm not convinced about Bennett, but 3 minutes ago I saw a highlight in here that was like, whoa, I understand why he drafted him first overall. Like he picked up the ball, two hands behind the 3-point line and dunked that baby, and it was kind of crazy. And that's the kind of potential you see in you like. I think that there's a chance that Bennett works out to be at least an average level player, which is probably a little bit more than you want to pay for with his contract, but it's still going to produce some wins, and it's probably going to at least increase his value on the trade market, right? And then you got things like the subtraction of JJ Barea, which is going to help a lot too.
Yeah, I think Bennett was he was out of shape. He was in the wrong situation. He was a really young player. I do think there's real potential there. But again, you want to set it up so that like you have the right guys playing, and like the current roster, the way it's constructed, it's going to invite a trade. Here's the thing. I don't think that trade makes them necessarily worse as long as they keep Rubio and they keep Deng, right? Those are the two key pieces you have to keep. And you have to assume that Deng is going to be an upgrade over Peck. And I do think that Deng is going to be an upgrade over Peck.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. So and it's very much like what I said about New Orleans is like, you can be mediocre by surrounding Anthony Davis with sort of mediocre level veterans, or you could be mediocre by surrounding Anthony Davis with mediocre 19 to 23-year-olds. And it should not be rocket science which one of those plans is better for the health of your franchise, right? Especially because like you look at guys like John Salmons and Luke Babbitt, and those guys, their ceiling is where they are now. They will not be better in 2 years. But you look at a guy who's 20 years old out of the NCAA and had like a decent rookie season. You don't know where his ceiling is. He might become really good in 2 or 3 years. So it's obviously the whole bullshit about the treadmill of mediocrity. It's not about being mediocre. It's about how your team is constructed while you're mediocre. You can be mediocre by having a bunch of guys that are just never going to really be in your future plans. They're just always going to be who they are now. Or you could be mediocre by having a bunch of guys who are not very good yet, but they're going to start to get really good soon. Or some of them will start to get really good and you keep them, and the ones that aren't, you let them go. And I think that's where Philadelphia is trying to go. I mean, I think before Philadelphia starts contending, they are going to enter a phase where they get to mediocre, right? They're going to, like, in 2 years, when Noel's really good and Embiid's really good and MCW's really good, they're going to be mediocre before they get great, unless, crazy things happen like Durant or LeBron.
Yeah, KG trade or something.
So, I mean,
I think, and you touched upon another team I want to talk about, which is like, we the Pelicans, right? So we love their front court.
And we will finish on the Pelicans, and I'll give us about 3 minutes for that. So let's go through them.
So we love their front court, and their front court looked amazing yesterday, right? And Ryan Anderson looks to be back. But the mistake they made is that the backcourt that they have on that team is kind of an atrocity. And they just went out and got these guys who don't really fit. And if they had like anything that was good, I mean, I like Tyreek, but like everything else after Tyreek and Drew Holiday is just an abomination. And if they had some decent pieces around that, then I would be totally on board with that team, because Asik and Davis and Ryan Anderson looks to be small sample size theater, but if those players are back to what they were, then that's really going to be a fun team to watch this year.
Oh, absolutely. One thing I'll actually give the Pelicans, this sounds really weird, their logo's pretty cool. I'll actually give it to them. I've mocked the Pelicans name. They have a cool logo, and Anthony Davis is awesome. I'm going to end us on that, and I really want to talk this. I know it's the preseason or the season. I know it's previews, but the NBA GM survey came out last week. We didn't have a show last week because of all the pieces. I have to talk a little bit about this, and I have to give your thoughts. So I want to point out a few things. One is Anthony Davis was on this survey, which is the GMs. You're not allowed to vote for your own team or personnel. They voted Anthony Davis as the player most likely to have a breakout season this year. They rated him second behind LeBron James as the player you'd want to build your franchise around. And yet he ranked behind LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin in top power forwards in the league.
Yeah, it's just totally absurd. I mean, LaMarcus Aldridge, I think even if you talked to, I don't think the GMs actually did this. I think the interns filled this shit out. But I mean, he doesn't even crack the top 10. And the idea of Aldridge being above, both Anthony Davis and Kevin Love in the power forward position is completely absurd. I also thought I don't think anyone's really paying attention to what's happening, because I don't think LeBron is going to play much power forward this year. He'll play some, obviously, but he's not going to play very much. And even if he played, 40% of his time, it should be obvious that when somebody says who's the best power forward in the NBA, they mean a guy who fucking plays power forward every night, not a guy who does the small ball power forward thing every once in a while. And it's like newsflash, LeBron went out and lost 20 pounds. Do you think it's maybe likely he wants to play small forward this year? And do you think it's pretty likely that the coach is going to do what LeBron James wants him to do in that regard? And do you think it's also pretty likely that since they now have Kevin Love, they won't feel the need to play these crazy small ball lineups? And I just don't think that the GM survey involves many people who are actually, I almost wish they could vote for their own franchises, because at least then they would have a fucking clue what they're actually talking about when they're answering your question.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of silly. And I mean, like, there is no world where, like, if New Orleans calls Portland right now and says, like, dude, we're trading you Anthony Davis for LaMarcus Aldridge straight up, that Portland doesn't do that deal in a hot minute, right? It's like Cleveland might actually think about it if that's the case. They're taking I forget that Dan Gilbert is taking a meeting with LeBron to the side, right? They don't hang up the phone if that call happens, right? So it's kind of a ridiculous thing. And again, I think our new numbers like LaMarcus Aldridge a little bit better, but like he's not in that. He's not even like Anthony Davis is like when we look at him, he's like way over in the corner because he just does everything, and he's young, and he's we're seeing it right now, right? So it's
yeah.
kind of
I mean, I was calling Kevin Love the best power forward in the game, but I strongly believe after this season that title is going to belong solely to Anthony Davis. So the things it looks like he's going to do this year are pretty absurd. I mean, it looks like he's essentially going to have a David Robinson season, and there's just no way. I mean, I love Kevin Love. I think Kevin Love is fantastic, but Anthony Davis is doing it on both ends of the court, and his impact on defense is way bigger than Kevin Love's impact.
Anybody,
I mean,
anybody catch the great graphic using the little eyebrow of all of his blocks last night?
I did not catch that.
I'll try and make sure we link it in the notes.
The Pelicans. I mean, you'd have to.
Oh,
pay
actually,
me to
on that note, Patrick, I'm nominating Anthony Davis for this year's. I'm calling it the Kevin Garnett Award. And that goes to the most talented player on the most meh team in the NBA.
Yeah, that's a pretty good name for that award, too.
Yeah,
and I think Kevin Garnett and Kevin Love have owned that award for years, obviously.
Yeah. And again, I wish that like they had one more good backcourt player on that team because they're so close. I mean, sorry. And I was trying to kind of like rack my head to see how I could like do a trade with them, but there's no trade I like with that team because they have nothing to offer, right? That they would want to part with.
I think that they could get rid of Tyreek, but I don't think anyone wants to touch Eric Gordon.
But here's the thing.
It's just that roster is such a mess of missed opportunities. Why'd you have to draft Austin Rivers? Why did you have to trade Nerlens Noel? It's just so many bad decisions.
I was actually going back to that draft. The problem really is like if you look after Austin Rivers, there's
not
a lot.
I know we could spend an entire podcast on
survey.
Podcast on on the survey. Let's get to this one because this one I think you guys know how I'm going to respond. Who is the best shooting guard in the NBA? 63% said James Harden. Good start. Number 2 at 18.5%, Klay Thompson. Number 3, Kobe Bryant. And this is even better. Number 5, Kevin Durant. 3.7%.
Who's 4?
Oh, no, Stephen Curry's on there, too. Stephen
Curry is on there.
Like, what is
where are they
behind Klay Thompson?
It's like, let me throw some names out at you. So, Andre Iguodala is a better shooting guard than Klay Thompson. And he's on the same team as Klay Thompson, probably. Danny Green is better. Wes Matthews is better. Let's see. Dwayne Wade. Did Dwayne Wade die? It's like I know he's decomposing, but did he actually die? Is he dead? Right. So this sounds like he's dead.
It's funny that the voters are giving more credit to Kobe Bryant coming back from an injury, who was gone all of last year, as opposed to Dwayne Wade, who had some injury problems last year.
Yeah, that's kind of absurd too. I mean that one's just a joke. Don't even get me started. James Harden is fine. I get James Harden's fine. Like if I had to pick one, I'd probably pick James Harden too. But I think I might also pick Lance Stevenson. But I mean, we all know that Lance wasn't making it on that list in the GM survey because, I mean, if you look beyond the points per game column, GMs generally don't have the foggiest idea what the strengths and weaknesses of the players on other teams are, unless they're one of like this sort of 3, 4, 5 GMs that actually listen to their stats people and their scouting departments and things like that, right? They just generally don't, unless they are, scouting out that particular player because they're trying to make a trade for that player. And I strongly suspect that the GMs fill out this form as if it's not anonymous, and so that they don't insult anybody by, leaving, because it's sort of like expected that you pick Klay Thompson and Kobe Bryant, so you might as well conform to everyone's expectations.
I'd give you that.
Would you rather have Danny Green or Klay Thompson?
No, Green. No question.
Yeah. Because defense matters, but like,
okay, but let me throw a monkey wrench into that. Do you think Pop could make better use of Klay Thompson than he could of Danny Green?
Oh God, yes. If Pop turned Marco Bellinelli into an actual super a decent a good NBA player, like he would just do marbles for Klay Thompson.
Yeah. But would it be better than just having Danny Green? Because the thing is, Pop knows Danny Green is going to play his role. And as much as we love Pop, we don't know that he can get Klay Thompson to play that role.
He'd get Klay Thompson playing in the kind of Patty Mills kind of point guardy style, and again Danny has kind of the skill set to like guard physical like bigger guys. So that's why I think I'd rather have Danny, because I can put Danny on like Steph Curry, I can put him on Klay, or I can put him on like LeBron if I need to. So it's a little more of a flexible thing for me, and he can actually hit the corner three. So they're not the same player actually. So Klay's undersized, so that's why I'm kind of there. So I'm looking at this as well. So let's see, underrated player acquisition, right?
Yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on that, Arturo. Can you defend Pau Gasol at all? Because some GMs seem to think Pau Gasol was as surprising or as important as LeBron James as a player acquisition.
Well, LeBron's not actually on the list. Well, actually, underrated.
Wait, hang on. It has to be underrated, because clearly LeBron's acquisition is not underrated.
So Pau was basically hot garbage the last 2 years in Los Angeles, right? But I think the argument is, and actually I've made this argument, which is like they were using him completely wrong. They were saying like, no, we need you to be a stretch four, because we need you to be Channing Frye on the 7 Seconds or Less Suns. So, and if you saw him play in like other like situations like the FIBA where they were actually like putting him on the back of the post, he could still do that at least 2 years ago. Now, the question is whether or not he can do that this year. So far, the results aren't great. And again, I think the other problem is like on that Bulls team, he's actually a downgrade over anybody else they're rolling out power forward or center. Which is kind of.
Did you see his performance tonight, by the way, just as a note?
Again, I could probably post up stat.
All right. Well, fair enough. Well, by the way, the reason I was bringing up Pau, because I know you'd gotten to off-season acquisition, is the two questions before the underrated were which teams made the best overall moves, which Cleveland got the lion's share. And I'm baffled anybody thought that Houston or Chicago was even close. Or actually, Houston was.
So we lost very quickly.
Am I back or am I out again?
You're back here.
Well, here's
Sorry,
the thing.
my internet's been.
So let's talk about Houston for a bit. So Houston basically went out and got like Trevor Ariza. Like you're thinking about the things they didn't do, but let's think about the things they actually did. So they upgraded from Chandler Parsons to Trevor Ariza. They went out and got like their draft was pretty good. They went out and signed Joey Dorsey, which we liked for the European numbers. Now, they lost some players, but I kind of like the players they brought back. Now, I'm not crazy about Jason Terry, but I think they had a decent offseason. And again, I think, I wish they had a little more depth at like the center. But I mean, I can defend the Asik thing by saying like, even though Asik was a good player, he just wasn't really into playing on that team. And you're sometimes just better off. Like if you have a guy who's like that, just getting rid of him, right? So I did kind of like what Houston did in the offseason. And I
to be fair, I misread that was last year. And I can't believe anybody thinks Chicago was anywhere close to Cleveland this season. Stat I'm going to end on, I don't even need any commentary on this one, is one of the questions is, who do you think the best offensive rebounder in the NBA is? And all I can say is this was just a test. If people even pay attention to the stats, because if you look at the numbers, Andre Drummond is so far off that scale.
Yeah.
Only 42.9% of front offices that answered this question got that question right, which to me tells you about the curve for NBA front offices.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally like, oh, here, let me check Basketball Reference real quick. This isn't a subjective question. I mean, Andre Drummond's probably a better offensive rebounder than the vast majority of defensive rebounders in the NBA. I mean, he is so good at that it's absolutely absurd to not instantly just say Andre Drummond. And then I guess after that, you're talking about like Kevin Love and Nikola Pekovic and Reggie Evans and that list of people that are good offensive rebounders. But did Love make the list? I don't even remember.
Love was number 2, yeah.
Okay. Well, which is funny because he wasn't even the best offensive rebounder on his team. Pekovic was better. It's like,
And I don't think
hello.
Pekovic got any votes.
And that's the thing.
all I
That's the
got.
thing. The big problem the Timberwolves are going to have is defensive rebounding, because Pekovic grabs his share of rebounds, but mostly on the offensive end. He's actually one of those rare guys who does better offensively rebounding than defensively rebounding, and it's really weird. He's just not a good defensive rebounder at all.
Yeah, they've got a bunch of athletes on that team. So I mean, with coaching and with like appropriate kind of spacing, you would expect those guys to get their fair share of defensive rebounds. Now spread out, but again, they got a bunch of guys who can actually leap, right? So like if somebody teaches them to be in the right position, then yeah, they should kind of, again, I'm not saying they're going to be great, but they shouldn't be terrible, right? So that's yeah. I mean, I get your point, but it's kind of, when you have guys like young guys with hops, and that's one thing you should do pretty well, right?
And I don't know what the cause was this year, but the ever famous tall, lanky white guy question was left off this year.
Yeah, it has to be a backlash from last year, because that was just embarrassing. That was that was the question of who makes the most with the least amount of talent, which Kevin Love won like 2 or 3 years in a row.
Yeah, this was like, so who would have been this year? It's
it probably would have been Kevin Love again. I'm sure.
Kevin Love again. Yeah.
Maybe with like an honorary bone thrown to Chandler Parsons or Jeremy Lin.
Yeah. But with that said, I'm definitely happy. I know we could talk much longer because I chose some really big topics for today's show, but I'd like to keep us about an hour because I have to type up notes when this is all done. So I'm okay to lead us into shout out territory. I've got a good one this week. So I'll let you two go first and just hope none of you take mine.
So I'm gonna give a shout out to our guest posters.
Damn it, those are my shout outs.
So I'm gonna give a shout out to Eugene Fisher. I'm gonna give a shout out to Ben Gulker. I'm gonna give a shout out as well to Coach Nick again, because we did that nice breakdown with Wes Matthews and Klay Thompson, and we actually did 2 breakdowns, and we did a second one where I told them, like, basically just hold this one until all the Golden State fans go crazy, and the hate makes you strong. So look out for that one in the future.
Yeah, those are the same guys I was going to shout out to. So now I got nobody.
Shout out Flip Saunders on Twitter, man.
No, I'm not going to shout out Flip. I'll shout out Ben. He's BR Grilker on Twitter, and Eugene Fisher is Glorious Hubris on Twitter. Both those guys wrote some great previews for us this week.
Go ahead.
And I'll give another shout out to Dave Barry, who is at Wages of Wins on Twitter. He put up some good stuff that I liked this year, and he gave us some good feedback on our model too.
Yeah, so we had some peer review on the model, which will show up in the piece. I was actually going to throw out a shout out to the league scheduling office, Bravo League scheduling office, for like putting the Knicks on a home road back-to-back for Cleveland's home opener. I mean, like, yeah, like there is absolutely zero chance that Cleveland loses that game tomorrow. It's
whoa, it's bold prediction.
It is a beautiful bit of scheduling. Like, it's like, oh God, like there's no way they could have set up like the Virgin Sacrifice in a better way than what they did. But like having the Knicks play back-to-back national TV games and having one of them like be on the road, nice.
All right. Well, my shout outs, actually, the first easy one is you two. This year I didn't do as much in terms of posting. Between Arturo and Patrick, I think you wrote a combined 25 pieces in 2 weeks, which is absurd. And of course, you both crunched the numbers and did everything. And in the midst of that, Patrick, you flew to Vegas and placed bets with those and came back. So absurd that you got that all done.
And that post is coming, is in the can. The overview for the stat post is coming, and it's in the can. We also crushed the preseason numbers. Like, if you guys haven't seen it, they're in there. They're kind of interesting, and we made everything nice and interactive, so that's there as well. So I think it was actually, like, as much as it's kind of a time-consuming and hard exercise, I do feel like it does add to the analysis as we move on towards the season. I feel like I know these rosters at this point, right?
Absolutely. And then the last shout out, my real one, and I put this on our forum, is Bill James, who had a fantastic interview. And one of my favorite parts, this is the guy who, in theory, you would call the start of the Moneyball revolution. I love this. He basically said, I thought that these people were doing better work and better analysis, and I've looked at the models they're making, and nope. And I hate to say it, I agree. I think there's a lot to be said. I think there's a lot of room for intelligent models. I think some NBA teams, hint, hint, could do wise to grab some people on this podcast. But that said, a lot of the people that have made big names for themselves as statistical modeling, I just haven't been that impressed with. So I'm glad Bill James said some similar stuff. So that's what I have.
And I want to make it clear, it's not anybody who's actually listening to this podcast who we're talking about right now.
I'm not going to guarantee that. I don't need to be nice. People whose work I like, you know who you are. You do good stuff. People who I don't, you probably know who you are too. So, and I hope you're listening to the podcast. You're good fans. So that's what I got, and we will see you next week.